And as Tony mentioned, this is already up on SlideShare, so I'll leave you guys with that if you want to refer back to this. Yeah, it's kind of long, but that's... If you go to the SlideShare, see Groenland, you can get to it there as well. But I thank everybody for coming out here. I know that you could be outside enjoying the breeze and the warmth.
Questions?
Yes.
Any questions?
And yeah, I was going to say that if anybody has any questions, I will do everything I can to answer them.
Hello?
In order, right?
Huh? In sequential order, yes. And if I can't answer a question, I'm sure somebody in this room can.
Yeah, I was wondering, you talk about creating characters. Do you get any feedback as far as people saying that's not really you, or as long as you say it up front? Are you talking about like a pretend character?
Yeah, and the example I used is a pretend character. I have friends who've created things where they've had a character kind of be the spokesperson for whatever it is they're doing. And if you looked at especially some of the iconic commercial images, people, I think, are open to those kinds of concepts because we're used to characters selling us things. So we know that if there are these characters, they're a representation of whatever. If I've looked and said, okay, in this room, this is the big thing, and I'm creating content for that demographic, if I create a character that represents that, a lot of times it's easier if you're creating content to kind of hide almost behind a character. If you think about actors, or you think about when you're a little kid and you dress up, think about how powerful you felt. You were passionate about running out, partially because you're going to get a bunch of candy, but also because you're not necessarily you, and people don't necessarily have such an issue with that. They know that somebody behind that character is writing the content, and eventually that little wall blurs to the point where people aren't thinking, well, what's the person behind the Joneses saying today? They're going to those sites and saying, what are the Joneses doing today? I can't wait to see. So does that answer your question? Excellent. Any other questions or comments or? Yes?
Just a comment. Fantasy is a fantastic way to work. You mentioned it in terms of, I teach creative thinking. And when people can't write, I just say, what were you thinking about yesterday? And a girl said to me the other day, you know, I thought I was this princess and I thought I was really powerful. And I said, okay, write from her perspective.
Exactly.
She wrote fantastic things, and everybody in the class was stunned. So we didn't know you were like that. We thought you were really quiet. And so your point on fantasy is perfect.
Well, I'm glad that it obviously works. It doesn't just work for me. It works for other people. And there are more types of sequential content. I'm sure that if we all end up over at Sherlock's, you might tell me sequential content that's worked, types of sequential content that have worked for you. And any other questions or comments, Sarah?
We talked earlier about how would you employ a hook into your entry so that you would give a little bit of what's going to come up next, but that it would pull people to come back the next time, like for your next entry, your next guest, your next whatever.
Typically, if that's the kind of sequence I'm shooting for on a particular entry, toward the end, when I'm doing a series, for example, I just come right out and say, hey, next week, I'm talking about this Monday, Tuesday. I might even give them a little glimpse of what's to come. If it's something that I'm trying to hook them from the beginning and have them read something that might be a little longer, usually if you can, and the thing is, you have to deliver on this, but if you can tell somebody how something is going to affect them in a positive way, they're going to read it. And the important thing is not to take advantage of that and then just do like a bait and switch or something like that, but to truly deliver on whatever it is you're promising. If you're doing sort of random blogging, there's still going to be a sequence in what you're talking about. On the Juggling Writer, even though I've been bad this month because I was working on a presentation, on Monday, I usually have something motivational to get people fired up. And I know that it works because the people who email me, that's their favorite thing. Anything else I talk about during the week, they read, but they come to my site for Monday motivation. And then if I mention, hey, I'm going to be doing a series, or how about we just motivate you all week long, and I tell them, I'm going to be talking about this on Wednesday, this on Friday, that hooks people. There are so many different ways you can hook people. I know that you have Fresh Fiction, and if you just mention that you're talking, you don't even have to tell me who the author is. If I'm going to your site and I'm into thrillers and I'm on the thriller section of your site, and you say, I've got an interview with an author that you're just going to love next week, people are going to come to that. May not even know who the author is. Cool thing about that, if I don't even know who that author is, but I read the interview and it's good, I'm going to go buy that author's thing, and I'm going to thank you for hooking me on that. So does that kind of...
Yeah.
Okay.
And I really like the thing about the character because we adopted a fox, a little stuffed animal fox. People in our car were drinking. Anyway.
It always starts with
Yes.
drinking.
After the car was parked. And so we took them on a family vacation, and then we took them to the next time we did authors. And it's been 2 years now, and if we forget Peaches at home, and Peaches has her own Twitter account, and she has her own blog and does her own stuff, but I forgot her, and I get nasty emails.
Yes.
And I didn't realize that that's really sequential. I was like, this is wonderful. Yes. You do things and you don't know that you're doing them.
People love characters. I follow Rob Holmes' dog, Chauncey, on Facebook. And I follow a friend in California. I follow their cockatoo. And the cockatoo's name is The Boy. And there's some of my favorite things because it's a character. It's an icon. And it represents a side of either the person who lives with the animal's personality or that person's perception of the animal.
Chauncey got a new dish, by the way.
Pardon?
New dog dish, you'll see that up there.
Excellent. Chauncey's cool. Howard?
Do you still do tech writing?
Yes, I'm currently a procedure writer for a large financial firm.
Oh, and my experience has been that tech writers are universally underpaid and underappreciated.
That would probably be a pretty accurate description, but I've been fortunate as a tech writer to write stuff that people need. I, before this job, worked in aviation, and it was neat the stuff that we worked on actually had to be used because if not, planes crash and bad things happen. And where I am now, it's training material and people actually use it, so it's not just something that you write and it goes off someplace. But yes, there are those tech writers who are underappreciated. I've been lucky to work for some places that actually appreciated them. And let's go back to passion. Even in an interview, I think people see that whatever I'm doing for them, I really do. I may not do everything that they're hoping I do, but I really do try my best in everything I do. Even if I fail, I'll get back up and do it until I get it right. And that's another lesson that you can learn from this presentation. Anybody else? Yes?
Do you keep a diary?
I used to have an online journal, a live journal, and I don't necessarily keep a diary as much as I used to. I make notes, and since I'm usually working on stories, I tend to be more, and that's where my mind is more, but I have notebooks within reach constantly. Since I've been in financial tech writer, my wife will attest to this, that I often will write down ideas or thoughts on adding machine tape and then rip it off and come home. And recently I totally redid my office, and I had to go through literally a pile of those. And I could see where my wife was coming from when she said you should organize these much better.
The reason I brought it up is that that's the ultimate sequential.
Yes, and being able, I still go back to the archives of any kind of journal I've kept, whether it's written or not. On a particular day, if I'm bored, I just go back and over the years, on March 26th, what did I do? And it's like, wow, this many years ago I ran a 5K on March 26th. I can't remember how many years ago that was, but I think it was March 26th was the first 5K I ever wrote. See, obviously I'm into writing. Ran. Well, thank you again, and I'm going to turn things back to Tony.
Thank you, Chris. Awesome.
Thank you, Tony.
A lot of ideas, a lot of great creative breakthroughs in adopting this whole mindset of writing structured sequential content. I'm going to be going back to that slide share.